And hello there, CP Finite Mathematics to lesson 1.3. We are going to be discussing a few more applications today on how we can solve some problems involving specifically what we call break even and supply and demand. All right, so let's get on into it. Problem. Student council is hosting a dance. They hire a DJ for $250 and are planning to budget $2 per person for food and drink. Okay? If they sell tickets to the dance for $6 each, how many tickets must be sold to break even? Okay, so someday maybe you're going to own a business and you want to know how much you need to sell in order to at least break even, or so to speak, whatever amount you're spending, you're making the same as what you're making. Okay, so in this situation, cost of hosting the dance can be expressed as a linear equation, and we are going to be looking at two equations, cost and revenue. So thinking to host this dance, how much is it going to cost? Well, it's going to cost $2 per person, okay, for food, and plus they need to hire that DJ, $250 just for the DJ. Okay, as a general equation, you can think of it as cost is equal to 2p plus 250. Okay, not too picky with what variables you use. The revenue, that's how much they're going to make. And they are making $6 off of each person, so $6 per person. There's no flat fee afterwards, so your revenue, or R, is just going to be 6 times P. Okay, now, some general terms here. Just know if cost is greater than revenue, okay, then that is when they are operating at a loss, okay? If it's costing you more than what you're making, then you're operating at a loss. If revenue is more than cost, then you're operating at a profit. And where revenue equals cost, that is where you are just breaking even. That is known as the break-even point. So all of these things are very important if you own a business someday, or just in any general business. You want to be, of course, operating at a profit. You want to be losing, okay? Now, so let's find where the break-even point is. And specifically, that's just where revenue equals cost. Another thing to know is that profit, okay, that is equal to the revenue minus the cost. Okay, that is going to be important. We'll look at that in a little bit. Anyway, the break-even point. So the break-even point. Basically, just put your two equations, set them equal to another. Put your revenue equation, which is 6p, and set it equal to the cost equation, 2p plus 250, and solve. Okay, so we are simply going to subtract 2p. Subtract 2p. We have 4 equals 250. And if you divide by 4, sometimes you'll get some decimals here, which is okay. But we come out to 62.5. Now with people, okay, we're going to round up to 63 people must attend in order to break even. Can't be 62 because you'll be at a little bit of a loss. 63, yes, you have a slight profit, but between everything, 63 people in order to break even. Now, just out of curiosity, what is the cost at that 63 people? So let's actually find what value that is, and you could now substitute into either equation. If we put 63 in for revenue, it should be about the same thing we put in for cost. So let's see if we have the revenue at 63, revenue of 6 times 63, we now know that the amount is about $378 that they'll break even. $378 to break even. Okay, now, before we move on to the next example, let's also consider, okay, usually with dances and things, you want to make a profit. Okay, so let's ask ourselves how many guests would have to attend in order to make a profit of, let's say, $500. Profit 500. Okay. In order to solve this one, we now want to consider the profit equation, which is revenue minus cost. So if we want to profit 500, we are simply going to put 500, and we're going to see where that's equal to our revenue, which was 6p, minus the cost equation. Now the cost equation was 2p plus 250. So just be careful. It's always minus cost. You're going to distribute the negative, which then makes this 4p minus 250 equals 500. Okay, so in order to make that 500, we essentially also need to make up the 250. So 500 plus 250, and that's going to equal 750p, or just equals 4 times p. And if we divide by 4, we would then need about 187.5, or round up 188 guests to profit 500. Okay, so those numbers, the profit could change depending on what you want, but that's how you generally find profit is, of course, revenue minus cost again. Okay, so break even, loss, profit, all that. Next up, we are going to be looking at supply and demand. So in economics, blank is used to represent the amount an item that sellers are willing to offer. So that is our supply, the number that they're willing to offer. And a buyer is looking at the demand, and where they intersect is the market price, and that's the price at which supply equals demand. Okay, so a lot of talks recently with all the vaccines and everything coming out about their supply and the demand. There's a big old equation somewhere out there dealing with this. Okay, our example here, the supply and demand for flour, they've been estimated as these here, and they're measured in pounds, units of flour. So basically we have our supply equation and the demand equation. The question is, what is the market price? What is the market price? And at what quantity is it met? Well, market price, again, price at which supply equals demand, is simply where S is equal to D. So we're just going to put our equations, 0.8 P plus 0.5 equals our demand, negative 0.4, and simply solve. So we're going to add the like terms. That's 1.2 and equal to 1.2 P plus 0.5 is equal to 1.5. Yep. Scroll up here. Subtract our 0.5. 1.2 is equal to 1, and divide by 1.2. So we do have some decimals we're dealing with here, but that's okay. And we get P is equal to approximately 0.83 repeating. Now, let's just look up here. So P is the price in dollars. So what we just found was that flour price is about 83 cents. And what we want is the demand, or pound units. So our quantity is in pounds, and that is simply found by substituting 0.83 into either equation. So you can put it into the negative 0.4 times 0.83 plus 1.5, and that will give us our demand at that particular cost. So 0.83 and plus 1.5 yields about 1.168 pounds. Okay, so 83 cents per about 1.168 pounds. That's really about it for market price. So remember that quantity, or the amount of things, is found after substituting. Price is always your X value, and that's really it. Market price, supply and demand, and the general idea with breaking even. So good stuff, guys. Try out the practice problems that follow and check your work.